Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be talking about the red Omnimon deck, and Omnimon is looking to be one of the most powerful Digimon going into our first English meta, and as such he has two variants, a red variant and a blue variant. So I'm going over the red variant today. And this is a pretty powerful deck because, again, the whole point is to try to get into Omnimon and then win off of the back of Omnimon alone while having some decent power along the way. So first up, starting with our Digitama, we're running one copy of Yokomon. So Yokomon is just our 5th Digitama. We don't really care about its ability, but if we want to, let's just say, attack into our opponent's Omnimon, if they just so happen to have one and don't get rid of our Omnimon, or just attacking into the opponent's Digimon that we want to get rid of, then the 1000 DP boost is nice, even though Omnimon already has some of the highest DP in the game. And then our primary Digitama starting off is going to be 4 copies of Koromon. So Koromon gives this nice inheritable ability during our turn. If this Digimon has 4 or more Digivolution sources, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. So obviously Omnimon being a level 7 means we're going to have slightly above the normal amount of Digivolution sources, so we could really utilize this ability to give him plus 1000 DP, and this is really important because in the mirror, if we do a security check against their Omnimon and we're even, then we trade and we lose our Omnimon, so this helps us win against the security check against the mirror match. Next, on to our rookies. First up, we have 4 copies of Monodramon. So Monodramon is just a value vanilla rookie, very cheap to play, very cheap to evolve into, and relatively average DP. So overall, not a bad rookie. Next up, we're running 4 copies of Guilmon. So Guilmon is a pretty good rookie because obviously he's cheap to evolve into. Most of the time we're not going to try to play him because we have better options, but he gives this nice inheritable ability where if our opponent has 5 or more cards in the trash, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. So we're just trying to increase his DP so that way it's easier for us to win a lot of battles against our opponent. Next up, we're running 2 copies of Biyomon. So Biyomon is just a copy of Monodramon on why we're playing it, just a value vanilla rookie. Cheap to play, cheap to evolve, decent DP. And then lastly, I'm running 4 copies of Agumon. So Agumon is just another DP booster in the inheritable abilities, so that way our Omnimon just can have some more DP. Next, on to the champions. I'm running 4 copies of DarkTyrannomon solely for the reason because he has a very, very cheap evolve cost for the champion slot and really not much a reason for any else. He's just really good to digivolve into and act as a good stepping stone so that way we could get into Omnimon or our Megas as quickly as we possibly can. Next up, I'm running 4 copies of Groundramon. So Groundramon is just the blocker of the deck. That's really the only reason why he's in here, is just to be a blocker because sometimes we just need to have blockers. And the last champion I'm going to be running is 4 copies of Greymon. So Greymon is a pretty solid champion because he gives the inheritable ability of security attack +1, so that way when Omnimon swings, he'll be swinging for 2 security instead of 1. Next up, onto the ultimates, I'm running 4 copies of Groundramon. So Groundramon is in here just because, very similar reason to DarkTyrannomon, he is just very efficient to digivolve into for the level. He also has a relatively low play cost if we really just need to raw play him instead of digivolve into him. So overall, he is just an efficiency card. Next up, I'm running 3 copies of Garudamon. So Garudamon is a pretty solid ultimate where it has the innate ability of piercing in case we don't have like a card to digivolve into. We could still try to pick off the opponent's Digimon if any of them are rested. On top of which, it gives a nice inheritable ability where if this Digimon is blocked, we get to draw 1 card. So obviously we'd prefer our Omnimon not to get blocked, but Just in case we do, if this is in our Digivolution source, then we get to draw a card off of it, and drawing cards is very, very good. And then the last ultimate of the deck I'm going to be running is Skullgreymon. So Skullgreymon is pretty solid because he has this when played ability where we get to destroy one of the opponent's Digimon with blocker. So Skullgreymon is a card we'd rather play more than Digivolve into. We could Digivolve into him if we really wanted to, but just being able to remove a blocker on the opponent's field is pretty solid, just so that way we can have our next attack be uncontested. On top of which, because we're incentivized to play him rather than to Digivolve into him, we don't necessarily feel as bad using him as the starting point for Digivolving into our Megas to Digivolve into Omnimon. Next, on to our Megas. I'm running 3 copies of Volcanicdramon. So Volcanicdramon is a pretty solid Mega because he has 2 abilities. His first ability is he innately has Security Attack +1, so even if we don't use him as a stepping stone for Omnimon, having Security Attack +1 and boosting his DP is still a very, very powerful strategy because he could still hit for a decent amount of damage. But if we don't really feel like we want to build him up, he has a very, very powerful when played ability where we can destroy all of our opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So he is either a small things board wipe, or he is a decent card with Security Attack +1. Either way, he is just a fantastic card to play. Next up, I'm running 3 copies of Phoenixmon. So Phoenixmon is just another value vanilla that's very, very efficient to Digivolve into and act as a stepping stone for Omnimon. On top of which, again, with all of our DP boosting, we don't necessarily feel super bad Digivolving into Phoenixmon and staying into Phoenixmon for a little bit, just because Phoenixmon can still put in some work. And then the last Mega of the deck is going to be the Man of the Hour, 4 copies of Omnimon. So Omnimon is just a very, very powerful card and definitely a huge card of controversy and topic, but regardless, he is the star and center point of the deck because he has 2 really strong abilities. So his first really strong ability is when he Digivolves, or when you Digivolve into him, you get to destroy one of your opponent's Digimon and then all other Digimon with the same name as that Digimon. So very, very solid and powerful removal ability, on top of which he has a when attacking ability. You get to return 1 level 6 card from your Digivolution source, add that card to your hand, and then this card becomes active. So that way he could swing multiple times. Granted, you could really only do this once, but sometimes once is just enough. But either way, this card is just an absolute monster to play against and to play because he is just a beast of a card that does a whole lot of work for the deck. Next, in terms of our options, I'm running 3 copies of Terraforce because it's Terraforce. We just get to destroy one of our opponent's Digimon. That's basically it. And then if it's in our security, then we activate its main ability to destroy one of the opponent's Digimon. So whether it's in our hand or in our security, this is just a fantastic card and one we generally want to see because it could help deal with a lot of potential problems that we might not be able to deal with otherwise. So removal is a very, very good and powerful thing. And then the last card of the deck is I'm running 1 copy of Tai Kamiya. So this is our memory fixer of the deck, where at the start of our turn, if our memory is 2 or less, it becomes 3. So just having him on board just makes our memory 3 all the time if it's anything less than 3. And then it has another ability where during our turn, all of our red Digimon with 4 or more Digivolution sources get Security Attack +1. So unfortunately, this does not synergize with Omnimon, considering Omnimon is white, but it does synergize with basically every other card in our entire deck. So if we have it stacked, let's say, with a Volcanicdramon on field, fully stacked, then Volcanicdramon will get an extra +1 security on top of its natural +1 security. So Volcanicdramon could hit for potentially 3 security, which is, again, pretty strong. And then if we have Phoenixmon, then it just gives it Security Attack +1, and again, that just allows Phoenixmon to do some work. So even though it doesn't exactly synergize with Omnimon, it's still a very, very good card to have nonetheless. So that is it for basically the main deck. I do have a couple of different options of a couple of different cards you could think about. So in terms of the lower end of the deck, it's pretty tight, but once we hit around our Ultimate and Mega slots, then that's when it becomes a little bit more flexible. So right now, you don't necessarily have to run Skullgreymon and Garudamon. You could run literally almost anything else and be just fine. So if you want, you could play a Metal Greymon because he has the when attacking ability, you could gain +3 memory, even though you have to give your opponent 3 additional memory because you're cheating on memory. At the end of the turn, you could use that +3 memory to play a Omnimon even faster than you normally would. You could also think about running Metal Tyrannomon just because he's another great value vanilla. This is more of a powerhouse vanilla where it's not necessarily as efficient to play, but he does have some relatively high DP, so you could start beating at the opponent's security right away. You could also run the Metal Greymon from the starter deck because he has a great inheritable ability where if this Digimon is blocked, then you get +3 memory. So again, just having good efficiency on memory is always a very good thing because it allows you to play your cards more efficiently. So even if this is just in the stack of a normal Mega, you could still use that +3 memory to potentially play an Omnimon even faster or even more efficiently. You could run a War Greymon if you really wanted to. So War Greymon has a when Digivolve, this Digimon gets security attack +1 until the end of the turn. So that's pretty solid because if you do Digivolve into Omnimon and are able to attack with Omnimon, even when you played a War Greymon, then that Omnimon still gets that security attack +1 for the turn. But that's just really, really expensive and not going to happen most of the time. But even then, just having War Greymon on the field with security attack +1 is really good. And then he has another ability where during your turn, when this Digimon attacks the security and does a security check of an option card, then the security effect of that option card does not activate. So that's really, really good because if you swing into one of the opponent's option cards in their security, obviously you don't know it's an option card in the security, but if you do and it's revealed, then you just win that security check easy peasy and they don't get anything. You could also run a Gallantmon because Gallantmon is also still a very, very powerful Digimon, even though he's a little on the higher end to Digivolve into, which isn't exactly optimal for Omnimon because the whole idea is to try to get into Omnimon as quickly and efficiently as possible. He is still a very, very powerful Digimon, and he has a when Digivolved ability. If we have a red Tamer, we get to destroy one of the opponent's Digimon with 6,000 or less DP. So, again, just more removal on Digivolving, and removal is very, very good. On top of which he has a really powerful when attacking skill. For every 10 cards in our opponent's trash, we get to discard one of the opponent's security. So this happens before the security check hits, and the card that's just dropped or discarded from the security does not get to do anything in terms of a security effect, so it's just straight up removed. So this card on attacking could be absolutely devastating for the opponent. And then you could also run War Greymon from the starter deck. Again, he's not exactly the most efficient card to Digivolve into, considering he's on the higher end, but he does have a really powerful ability where during your turn, for each 2 Digivolution sources this card has, he gets security attack +1. So even just that ability alone is, again, still very, very powerful because if he's fully built and not like really interrupted by anything, then he's going to have 4 Digivolution sources. And if he has 4 Digivolution sources, he basically has security attack +2. And then if you have Tai Kamiya on the field, he'll have security attack +3. So he could just hit for a lot of damage all at once. And then as far as another really, really powerful option card you could possibly think about running is Gravity Crush. So I think this card is like vastly underrated considering it just says you gain 2 memory. Even though you have to give 2 memory to your opponent at the end of your turn, it doesn't necessarily matter depending on how you use this card. You could use it to mitigate that downside. But the only reason why this card is kind of held back is the fact that it doesn't have any security effect. So you really just want to see this card in your hand, and sometimes that's not always going to happen. But for the most part, this is just what Omnimon Turbo is. The deck isn't really going to be changing a whole lot. Maybe a couple of card choices are going to swap. but for the most part, this is just what the deck is. Again, the whole concept is just to turbo into Omnimon as quickly and efficiently as you possibly can, using his when Digivolved ability to destroy the most threatening Digimon on the opponent's field, and then if you don't see him as quickly or as often as you like, you still have two very powerful Megas and some other very powerful options to fall back on. So that's kind of it for this deck profile. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below, and feel free to tell me your thoughts about the deck or comments about the deck in general. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.